Okay guys, we're going to do some quick notes of a radian degree conversion. So a radian is a unit of measure like degrees, inches, or anything like that, where the value of the angle is equal to the arc length of the radius. So what that means, if this is our radius, and we took that radius and we laid it along this arc length right here, those are the same value, so that's 1 radian. So it says even if the definition is slightly confusing, it's fairly easy to calculate. So these are the main things that you need to remember. So to convert from degrees to radians, you're going to multiply your value by pi over 180. If you want to go the other way and you want to convert from radians to degrees, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal of that. You're going to multiply by 180 over pi. So the whole front page is just examples working out different questions, so you had them. And then on the back we're going to do some problems of our own. So the first example says convert 120 degrees to radians. So if we look back up at the top where we have our definitions, it says to convert from degrees to radians, we multiply by pi over 180. So we took our 120 degrees, we multiplied by pi over 180. So when we did that, we did 120, and then we put it in the numerator, because if you remember, this 120 is over 1, so it's in the top of a fraction. So we have 120 pi over 180. Well, the 120 over 180 reduces to 2/3. So our answer here is 2 pi over 3. So 120 degrees equals 2 pi over 3 radians. All right, so let's talk about converting from radians to degrees. So it says convert negative pi over 18 to degrees. So let's look back up here. Anytime usually it has a pi in it, it's going to be a radian. So if we're going from radians to degrees, we're going to multiply by 180 over pi. So I took my radian, my negative pi over 18, I'm multiplying it by my 180 over pi. These pi's are going to cancel each other out. So in the numerator, I'm left with 180, and the denominator, I'm left with 18, and then the negative just goes out front. It's not really assigned to anything. So if you think about this, how many times does 18 go into 180? Well, it goes in 10 times. And then we brought our negative down, so our answer for that, negative pi over 18 equals negative 10 degrees. Okay. So the third example down here says to draw the angle 2 pi over 3. So the first thing we need to figure out is how many degrees is that? So if we have 2 pi over 13, we're going from a radian to degree. So we'll look back up at the top. To go from radian and degree, you multiply by 180 over pi. So we took our 2 pi over 3, we're multiplying by 180 over pi. These pi's cancel out, so my calculator, all I'm really doing is, and this is the thing about going from radians to degrees, you can just type both of those in your calculator, and your calculator will do all this canceling out for you, okay? But just so you know what happened, 2 times 180, you got that answer, and then we divided it by 3, and it's 120. So whenever you draw that, positive angles open from your positive x-axis, and they open counterclockwise, okay? So we'd go past the 90 mark to 180. So from here to here, that's a total distance of 120 degrees. Okay? All right, the next one says change 5.63 radians to degree measure and round to the nearest tenth. So to go from radians to degrees, we multiply by 180 over pi, so that's what we did right here, but this one doesn't have a pi in it to cancel, so we're literally just going to type this in our calculator just like it looks, and when we do that we get 322.6 degrees. So it's pretty simple. All you're basically doing is multiplying. The only one you really kind of have to pay attention to is whenever you go from degrees to radians, you kind of have to pay attention to where your pi is. So let's get started on this. So it says convert these degree measures to radians. So the first one we have is 90 degrees. So again, it started with the positive x-axis and it opened counterclockwise to the 90 degree mark. So if you remember on the other side, to convert from degrees to radians, you're going to multiply by pi over 180. That's your conversion factor. So I'm going to take my degree, my 90, and I'm going to multiply it by pi over 180. Okay? So that equals 90 pi over 180. So remember that 90 just goes in the numerator, and then we have to think, how does this 90 and 180 reduce? Well, 90, we can reduce these both by 90, right? It goes into both of those. So that'd be 1 pi over 2. And most of the time you'll just see it as pi over 2. You usually don't write the 1. So here it would just be pi over 2. Either of these answers would work, but usually you just don't write the 1. Okay, so let's go over here to the 120. We're going to do the same exact thing. So I have 120. I'm going to multiply it by my conversion factor, pi over 180. I'm going to go ahead and put these together. So that's going to be 120 pi over 180. And the nice thing about this, guys, if you have your calculators handy, if you just plug in this 120 over 180 in your calculator, usually it'll reduce that fraction for you so you don't have to think about it. So when you reduce that fraction, you get 2 over 3, and then you have to remember to bring down your pi with it. So it'd be 2 pi over 3 is your answer on that one. Let's go to the next one. We have 300 degrees, so it opens from the positive x-axis and it rotates all the way around until we get to 300. So we have 300 times pi over 180. We're going to put all this together, so we get 300 pi over 180, and again, if I have my calculator, I'm just going to type in 300 over 180, see what that fraction reduces to, and whenever you do that, I can show you just so if I was doing this in my calculator, I would do 300, maybe if it turns on, let's go, new document, add calculator, so 300 divided by 180, let's hope it's in. So see how it reduced it to 5/3? So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to put 5/3, but then I have to remember to bring my pi down with it. So my answer here would be 5 pi over 3. Alright, let's do the 420. So we have 420 and we're going to multiply it by our conversion factor, pi over 180. So that'd be 420 pi over 180, and guys, you really don't have to write all these steps out. It's just, you know, trying to keep it neat for you guys on these notes. So on my calculator, I'm just going to do the numbers, the 420 over 180. So we're going to do 420 divided by 180, and we get 7 over 3. So when we go back, we have 7 over 3, and then I have to remember to bring that pi down with it, so it's 7 pi over 3. So there's that. Alright, so let's switch over to converting radians to degrees. So if you remember to convert radians to degrees on the front, your conversion factor is 180 over pi. Okay, so we're going to convert this pi over 4, which is right here, to 180 over pi. We're going to multiply it by 180 over pi. We're going to convert it to degrees. So I'm going to take that, pi over 4, I'm going to multiply by 180 over pi, and I'm just going to type that in my calculator. So we're going to take, and pi is down here, so I have pi divided by 4, and I'm going to multiply it by 180 divided by pi. And enter, and we get 45. So our answer here is 45 degrees. Okay, so we're going to do the next one. This one's 5 pi over 4, so I have 5 pi over 4. I'm going to multiply it by my conversion, 180 over pi. I'm going to go type it in my calculator. And hit enter, and we get 225. So this one is 225 degrees. Alright, let's do the next one. We have 5 pi over 6. We're going to multiply it by the same conversion factor. Go type it in your calculator. And just to kind of save some time so I'm not wasting your time, once you plug that in, we've shown you how to do it twice, you get 150 degrees. Alright, so this last one's a little different. So this one is saying that it's 7.854 radians. So to figure that out, we're going to take that and we're still going to multiply it by the same conversion factor. So let's go do that on our calculator. So we have 7.854 times 180 divided by pi. And when we do that, we get 450.001. So I'm just going to go ahead and write this whole thing since it's not very long. Alright guys, that was kind of quick, but hopefully you caught on. It's pretty easy. You're just multiplying by those conversion factors. Good luck on the assignment.